Let's get started. All right, welcome. Thanks everyone for coming to our webinar today. We're very excited to see you all again, as well as any new people that may be joining us for the first time today. In a moment, we'll dive into the main content that you see on our agenda screen today. But first, we'll go over a bit of housekeeping and how the UI of this platform works. Um, Also, we want to introduce ourselves. I'm Berkeley Baker. I'm the Senior Manager of Client Success here at Arkus. I've been here 8 years. My bread and butter is RE to Salesforce migration projects, which I've probably done over 20 of those projects here at Arkus. And very happy to be here today to facilitate this conversation. Alongside me is Steve Parrott, who is our Director of Data Services, who is all knowing of all things data and also a great DJ. Now that we've introduced ourselves, we will be turning our cameras off for the presentation so that we can focus on the conversation. All right, so I mentioned housekeeping, so let's discuss a few items. There is a question and answer panel to the top right of the window, and you can communicate with us by asking a question there. Those questions are only visible to us, the hosts. We will monitor questions as we go and set aside dedicated time for Q&A at the end of the session. The chat function is read-only, and our behind-the-scenes team will be sharing resources out through that. So if you want to communicate with us, please use the Q&A panel. So a few things to remember. We will be sending out the recording to everyone after the call. If you see the question mark sign in the top right corner of your screen, that is where you can submit your questions. We'll do our best to answer all questions during our Q&A session, and we will follow up directly if we cannot answer those questions if we run out of time. The screen sharing may lag for a second, so don't be alarmed. And ways to contact Arkus, you can send a request directly in that question panel. You can fill out our contact us form on the arkusinc.com website, or you can email me directly. You can find my email in the chat. So let me tell you briefly about Arkus if you don't already know. We are a Salesforce consulting partner celebrating our 15th year anniversary within the Salesforce ecosystem. We've grown from a team of 4 to a team of more than 80 experts. And as you can see from our stats, with more than 2,700 projects completed for more than 800 clients. In those projects, we average a client satisfaction score of 4.9 out of 5 stars, which is extremely important to us. Our clients include industry leaders in the nonprofit, education, healthcare, and arts and culture industries, and many more. So, with all that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Steve today to lead us through our content.
Great, thank you, Berkeley. Let's get into it. Let's talk about data. The reason that I'm excited to talk to you about this today is my whole career has been based on making decisions with data. Some of those decisions have been good decisions, some of them have not been so good. And I want to explain a little bit about how that underlying data has a big impact on the decisions that you can make throughout your day. Let's start with a couple of examples. First of all, I'm sure all of you are familiar with these airlines, American Airlines and Delta Airlines. I fly a lot. Maybe you know some other airlines. So what if I were to ask you which one of these airlines has the best data strategy? You may look at me a little strange and say, I don't know. How would I know what their data strategy is? What does that even mean? Isn't that something that people do inside an organization? And the answer is yes, it is. But what it really means is, what if I were to ask you which airline has the best customer experience? Now you can sit there and say, well, I like the way that I can buy my tickets online, or I like when I can change, or when I go to the lounge, they know who I am, or whatever those examples are that give you a good customer experience. I can tie all of that back to their data strategy. So I don't actually want to talk to you today about data strategy. I want to talk to you about how do you make a better customer experience. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, that's something the entire organization understands. Your customers understand, your investors, partners, they all understand that. So with a powerful data strategy, you can actually then deliver a better customer experience. Throughout this presentation today, we're going to take a couple of pauses and just do a couple of quick surveys. So I'm going to present to you now a survey for you to answer.
So our survey question is, how aligned is your data strategy with your customer experience strategy? We'll give you guys a couple seconds to begin to vote. All right, we're 50-50 between not at all, somewhat, but could be improved. So it looks like most of our answers so far are jumping between 1 and 2.
All right, that's actually not surprising because a lot of people don't think of data as part of an overall strategy with the customer experience. And when you think about it, like how hard is it to work with data? Data is just a bunch of ones and zeros, and it's always right. Data can't be wrong. So why is data strategy such an important part of this, and yet nobody is aligned with it? Let's do another example. What would you do if I were to ask you this question? Who is the top musical artist of the last 60 years? And again, since Berkeley said I was a good DJ, it's only appropriate that I do music references. So think about this. Who was the top musical artist for the last 60 years? What is it you would want to know to be able to answer this question? Seems like a pretty straightforward question. So let me do this. I'll give you this data source. You've got the Billboard 100 for each year for the last 30 years. What that is every year, Billboard magazine puts out a list of the top 100 songs of that year. So you've now got to think of it as an Excel file or just a data file of 60 years worth of 100 songs. So you've got 6,000 records in this file. So now I've got my data. What's my criteria now for what's a top artist? Well, let's do this. How about the number of 100 hit songs they have? It's pretty simple. So, Arkus, we're going to have an awards banquet and we're going to invite all the artists to this big banquet, and we're going to hand out an award to the top musical artists for the last 60 years. So, let's see how we're going to do it. It's pretty simple. It's a straight up data example. So, let's look at it. So, what the data kind of looks like, just give you an example from 2008. Number one song was Low by Flo Rida, and so on down the line. So you've got 6,000 of these records. We start with, let's sort them. So I sort them all by artist, and then I add them up. So in this particular case, Rihanna has 22 hits. I sorted them all and added the Rihanna. I added the Rihanna hits, and I got 22, and then I go how many Madonna and how many so on down the line. Most of you could probably do that with a sort and a break and a subtotal in Excel and be done this project in 5 minutes. And we'd be like, see, working with data is not that hard. So I've done it. I'm ready to hand out my award. I call Madonna up and I give Madonna the award because she has 35 hits. Mariah Carey's in second with 27 and Elton John 26. Rihanna is somewhere 21. See, I have a typo in my data already. So it's 22 hits, and she's down in ninth place. But Rihanna's sitting at the table and she's looking at me and she's like, I think your data is wrong. I'm like, what do you mean? We did it. We sorted it. We did it right. It's wrong. And so I said, let me go back and look at the data. So I go back and look at the data, and I discovered that Rihanna had all of these songs that she did with other people. So now some judgment comes in there. Do we include a song that Rihanna did with Jay-Z as a hit for Rihanna? Does Rihanna get credit for that as being part of the top artist? So if we were to do that now for all the collaborations, Drake now moves up in a tie with Madonna, and Rihanna jumps up to fourth place with 32 hits. So it moves around based on the interpretation of what's in the data. So now I have to invite Drake up to the stage. So now we've got Drake and Madonna up there, and Rihanna is still not satisfied because she's saying, look, there's songs that were hits in more than 1 year. I know Drake also has some hits that are in more than 1 year. So does Disturbia again count as 2 hits or 1 hit? So now I got to go and dedupe the data and I come up with another list. And now, so Madonna is back to number 1 by herself. Drake dropped 3 positions because of dupes. Rihanna dropped 4 and now has 28 hits and still in 4th place. As you can see, you go on and on with this, and I can keep going with more examples. So what started as a very simple data example that you would probably do in less than 5 minutes turns into something complex. So take that back to your work life. You ask a question or you see a report, you make a judgment, you interpret it, and then you go run with it and you make a decision. Well, as data experts or as people working with data, you've got to think through these scenarios on how the user, how the people using these reports are going to use them, interpret them, and make decisions. So at the end of the day, what is it that the data strategy is all about? Why is it so important? You've seen the show Severance. They work with screens like this, and people in the data world are probably comfortable with screens like this, but people outside the data world are not so comfortable. So what it is we have to do with our data strategy is turn screens like that into meaningful reports, nice graphs and charts and tables, and it looks pretty. But at the end of the day, pretty doesn't get you there. You need to have actionable insights. And so it's very, very important that somebody who's looking at the report knows exactly what it is, knows that they can trust it, they know it's complete, they know it's timely. Otherwise, they look at it and they say, oh, that's a nice chart, but I still got to go to Bill or I got to go to Susie or Mary to get more information. Or, hey, I know this hasn't been updated in 2 months. The last month that I see there is February, and we're at the end of May. So part of your data strategy is to make sure that everything is timely, accurate, up to date, so that users, when they look at outputs, reports, dashboards, whatever it may be, they can trust it and move on and make their decisions. Finding the right tools is also an important part of the equation. We work with Salesforce, but we also work with a lot of other pieces of software. So Agentforce, MuleSoft, Tableau, Data Cloud, those are all great tools, but they are only part of the answer. They are not the solution in itself. All right, you need to make sure that you understand how to use it and use these tools in the right way to implement your strategy. So what happens now when you've got the right strategy and the right tools? You get increased benefits. I've been talking about making better decisions, and yes, that is an important part. But you can do other things such as reduce costs, enhance customer engagement, improve your productivity. Think about it. If you don't have to run around and double check reports or wait on reports to be generated, think you can be more productive in doing the things that you should be doing in your job. Expediting growth. If you've got all the data and the right interpretation to make decisions, my go to market strategies, can happen faster and be more effective, and the list goes on and on. So ultimately, what you're trying to do as a data strategy person or somebody involved in data strategy is trying to unlock your organization's full potential. You don't want data to bog you down. You want data to be the catalyst to help you improve your business so that you can grow, expand, and have that ultimate customer experience. So before I now get into some specifics on the tools, I think it's time to do another survey.
Great. Our survey question now is, how connected is all your data? Be honest, you can tell the truth. Lots of silos, little connection. Yep. Connected in some areas. Looks like we got everybody across pretty much all the different options. And that's kind of what we would expect. Just every situation is going to be a little bit different.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for doing that survey. I promise I think it's only one more coming up. So data organization, let's talk about that. Data Cloud is one of Salesforce's relatively new products, and a lot of folks ask me the question, well, what is Data Cloud? Is it a database? What data lake? What is Data Cloud? Because they're trying to look for a solution that they can plug into something that they already know. And the way technology is moving today is you have to think outside of that. There's new ways of doing it. The reason I asked the survey question about where is your data is historically, you would have to take your data from wherever it was, whatever database it was in, whatever system it was in, and move it to the system that you want to use it and access it. So you're moving data around a lot, you're consolidating data, you've got to dedupe, you got to merge, you have to do all of these types of things. Data Cloud, as an example, there could be others, but I'm going to talk about Data Cloud. It's a way that you can keep your data where your data exists, but still use it, unify it, organize it, and create that single view. So think of Data Cloud. Yes, it's a place you could store data, but think of it more as that lens where you can look at the data all over your organization. So now imagine when you're trying to write a report and the CEO or somebody from the board is asking you for some information, and you're like, one number's in this system, one number's in this system. I don't know how to make them talk other than print them out or download them and try and figure out how to do themselves. With Data Cloud, you can keep them there and have that unified view of the data to be able to answer that question. So, what are some of the key components? One, as I said, it brings all of your data together. Two, it gives you this 360 view. So if you've got one user in one system, another user in another system, and you don't know if they're the same person or not, Data Cloud can help you identify and resolve that identity and say, yes, this is the same person. They're in two different systems. They're referred to differently, but I can message them. All right, so I can target the right people. If you think of that in segmentation, now that I know who they all are, I can set up the right targets. And then the next step is what's called activation. I now know when to engage, how to engage, and then ultimately at the end of all of these interactions, you can now analyze the information and create insights for your business. So having Data Cloud sit on top of your organization, it'll give you access to so many things that before, yes, you could have done, but Data Cloud just makes it so much easier and more powerful to do. So how does it do that? Well, this is how Data Cloud works, but it's also how pretty much any system works. So don't think of this as a Data Cloud working example. Think of this as how you want to organize it. Everyone focuses their time on the right-hand side. They're looking at a report, an action, or maybe even they're trying to do something with AI and it doesn't work. And most of the time they blame the report. Oh, there must be something wrong with the report. But what we do is we like to think of the whole flow of data from where it started, where did it exist, how did we get it, how did we map it and transform it, how did we put governance around it, how do we make sense of it so that we know the data we're about to use is meaningful, accurate, timely, and well defined. If you can do all of that, then the right-hand box of analyzing and acting becomes a lot easier because you can trust that data and you can then use it to make the proper decisions that you need for your business. Next survey question, the AI revolution. I'm sure you're all talking about AI, so let's do a little survey on it.
How prepared is your company for AI? Oh, somebody was quick. Fully embrace AI and we're optimizing. Awesome. Not ready and not going to happen. So once again, we got answers in a bit of all the categories.
Well, I love that there's being optimized because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when and how. So this AI revolution is here. If you've been to any Salesforce presentation in the last year or so, you've probably seen this next slide. As soon as we finish up the survey here. There we go. So this is a slide that Salesforce uses. I stole it from them, but they talk about the evolution of AI from the chat box to copilots to now what's called Agent Force. And people ask me, well, what actually is it and how does it work and when do I use it? How do I use it? All very good questions. But most of the time, people are, I don't know how to use it. I don't know where to begin. Hey, is my data good enough? Don't I need perfect data to use AI? And the answer is no, you don't need perfect data to use AI. You need control data. And so the data that you're using has to fit within the purpose of what you're trying to do with AI. So in other words, you don't need to fix everything in your organization to start using AI. You can start as small as you like and then build and grow from there. But people are still confused on what is AI? Is it taking my job? Well, let's remember, in addition to data, there are people involved in this process too. So think of yourself as I now have a new task that I want to do. I have a new responsibility, a new function. And historically, I would go hire a new employee to conduct this work. So to hire a new employee, you need to determine what the role is. I need to create a job description for the new hire. So what is it that this person is supposed to do? I then hire the person and I need to train them and give them access to resources, give them access to our filing system, where our documents are, our user manuals, all of those type things. So you have to train. You don't expect the new employee to come in and just know everything about the company. Next thing you need to do with a new employee is set the goals. What do you expect from them? They need to know what's expected. You need to also set up the guardrails. So what does that mean? Well, what's the policies? What is it they're allowed to do? What are they not allowed to do? You put guidelines on a new employee. They don't just walk around and do whatever they want. There are rules and guidelines. And then finally, you have to put them somewhere in what I call a channel. So they're either assigned to a team, a group, a territory, some sort of a function. They have to belong somewhere. They just don't do their job across the entire organization. So where does AI come into all of this? Why are you talking? This is not an HR call, this is a data call. So why are you talking about all this? Well, because you would do the exact same thing with an agent. To build an agent, that's what it's called in the Agentforce world, is building an agent. You have to define the purpose of the agent. So what is it you want this agent to do? What is the function? Look up something, generate something. What is it? It's a defined purpose. All right. Once you do that, you've got to give access to the data for this agent. Now, you don't give the agent access to your entire organization, your entire database, just like you don't give a new employee that access, right? You give them access to the data they need to do their purpose. And then you have to set a goal. What is it the agent is doing? What is their objective? What is their goals? Just again, like a new employee, you put guardrails around them. What systems can they operate? When can they operate? The frequency that they run. People say, well, doing AI, it's so expensive. It just chews up data. No, it doesn't. You put guardrails on all of this. And finally, you have to determine where it's going to be connected, what application it's going to be running in. And from there, you can now, whenever you're presented with a new problem, you can say, hey, this new responsibility that I want completed in my organization, do I want a person to do it or do I want an agent to do it? So my recommendation, let the people do what people do best and let the agents do what the agents do best. But don't think of them as completely different things. There are all of these controls in place with agents. So the biggest fears that I hear from people about getting into AI, one, they don't know what it is. Two, they're afraid their data won't work. Three, they're afraid of security. Four, they're afraid of the cost. And yet, when you set up AI properly, all of those are addressed the exact same way they're addressed when you hire a new employee. So hopefully that makes sense with the AI world and gives a little clarity to what's happening with AI. It's not necessarily the Wild West. There is a lot of structure and organization, and there is a way for you to dip your toe into it, get your data aligned with your AI strategy. So bringing this all together, whether you are talking of trying to figure out your AI strategy, whether you're trying to figure out your data strategy, whether you're trying to figure out how to grow the business, improve your customer experience, we look at it from a data perspective all the same way. And that is you have to go on the data strategy journey. And so you start with that data, you have to figure out how you're going to access it, how you're going to clean it, transform it. So basically, the connect, the prepare, right? The understanding what the data is, then consolidate all of this information. Once you have all of that, you can then start acting on it and do actionable insights. So we never come into a project, we never think of this as something you do in isolation. Somebody wants a report fixed. Well, is it the report or is it somewhere on this journey? So it's very, very important to understand the insights you're trying to gain from your business, but you have to walk through this entire journey to make sure that the insights you're getting are really the insights that you want to achieve for your organization. So that wraps up the formal part of the presentation. And now we have about 15 minutes, 10, 15 minutes where we can have discussion, comments. I can't see if people are putting comments in there, but if there are questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions on anything you've seen there or anything related.
Great. Thank you, Steve, for a wonderful and informative conversation. I hope everyone found this information helpful. We did have a few questions come in during the webinar, so let's address those. So one question, how would one begin creating a data strategy for an organization?
It's a good place. The start is always at the beginning, but where is that beginning, right? So I like to think of what's the reason that you're even embarking on this data strategy. In the airline example, it was customer experience. In the music example is I want to make sure the award goes to the right person. So often people don't sit there and just say, oh, we better do a data strategy because there is no benefit to the end of the business that's been identified. It's a very important thing to do, but identifying that end goal is really where you need to begin. In other words, hey, we want to expand to a new market and we don't have the data to do the analysis, or we want to launch a new product and I don't have the data, or customers are complaining about our customer service and I don't understand what the issue is. So start with a real business situation and then say, okay, I now need a data strategy that's going to give me the best insights to recognize that business opportunity.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. What would be a reasonable timeline um, to create a data strategy? I think that's what it says.
The magic question. It really comes down to the size of your organization, the amount of data. So if you're one location, one database, one workflow, you can do it pretty quickly. It's just identifying. If you're a global organization with multiple systems, it can take you a while. And I like to say that in some ways you're never ever done because there's always new data sources, there's new workflows, there are new business opportunities. So you're always refining your data strategy to meet the new challenges of the business. But as a general rule, you need to invest at least a couple of weeks of dedicated time to get at least to a comfortable place. And then from there, you can build on it and continue to develop it over time. Thank you for
Great.
that question.
Yeah. Can you discuss security issues with Agentforce?
Sure, as much as I can. So Agentforce is a Salesforce product and it's built on the Salesforce trust layer. So unlike something like ChatGPT, which is an open platform for the most part, all of the Agentforce agents run through the Salesforce trust layer, which means it follows the same security protocols as everything that you have set up within Salesforce. But if you're using something other than Agentforce, security is a very important part. Just like with the setting up hiring a new employee, you're not going to give them the keys to the bank account and give them the checking account number and your tax ID numbers. You don't do that. You've got security in place for new employees. You follow the same security protocols for an agent. And like I say, the Agentforce security is done through their trust layer.
Right.
All right.
Oh, it's all Agentforce. What are some good use cases for Agentforce?
It's really left wide open. So some use cases that I've seen and used, if it doesn't relate to your particular business, you're like, okay, big deal. So for one example is a medical center had three different campuses, and each campus had, 2 to 5 different parking lots. And they were finding a lot of patients that had to come in for their test results, um, didn't know which campus, didn't know where to park. So an agent was set up to help patients uh, proactively let them know which campus and the recommended parking site based on where you're coming from, the direction from where this is your zip code where you live, this is where your appointment is, this is the parking lot we recommend, and completely automated. Another use case in the medical field is you get test results and people go down the WebMD route, and before you know it, they've got 3 weeks to live because they've read something in their blood report. Well, we've set up an agent to help interpret results while you're waiting for the doctor to calm down and actually identify if there is something there that's urgent, and then escalate the priority of the processing. And so those are two medical examples. But really, the best way to think about it is, how do you decide if I need to hire a new employee? How do I decide if I'm going to give an existing employee more responsibility? Think of those situations and then say, all right, do I really need a person sitting there doing this day in and out, or is there a way that I can automate it? And don't think of it as, oh, I only want to do Agentforce or do an AI implementation on very magical things. It can be magical, but I really recommend starting with routine tasks that are repetitive, that you can use to get insights to help the business. So instead of a person sitting there and reading a 35-page report to do a response, have an agent summarize that 35-page report and make some recommendations on what they should do next, so the people can do the people part a lot sooner. Hopefully that answers that question. Any other questions?
Yeah. How do you see Agentforce helping nonprofits? Isn't Agentforce expensive?
uh, right now, by the way, at Arkus, we do a lot of work with nonprofits. So, speaking in the nonprofit sector, uh, I can I can't tell you a more important time to start using agents. And the reason is the nonprofits that we work with are being challenged right now to do more with less. And so, how do I get more from my people? How do I get more from my donors? How do I even understand my donors to find out if the next donation they're making is the best that I could get from them? Those types of things. So it's more critical now than ever to start thinking about AI. Now, go back to what I said earlier in the presentation. Uh, you have to start small. So let's start with a very small use case. And Agentforce pricing is on a consumption basis, which for most people that's confusing, but it is important to design your agent keeping that in mind. So instead of going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, moving data, running stuff, having it designed the right way, having it thought out the right way can make using agents very affordable. So, great question. Yes, it's very relevant to nonprofits right now, especially in analyzing donations and donor activity. Very important part right now to be using Agentforce. And from a pricing perspective, working with people like Arkus, with Salesforce, we can certainly help with the getting it organized right so it doesn't cost a fortune in consumption.
Yeah, and I want to add to that, to the first point about helping nonprofits. One thing that I always do in the course of projects is try to find ways to automate certain processes for people, essentially giving people more time back in their day for the things that they're just doing over and over again. And I think to me, Agent Force kind of enhances that. Now you can start to think of, if you're a membership organization and you get a ton of calls a week before an event because people are trying to figure out what time the event starts or where to park or who going to be the presenters, or what are my membership benefits? That could be a good example of an agent where they could ask that information and you've got the knowledge base to kind of answer those questions. So now I can take a person away from having to do that because I can have my agent focus on that. And now I can have people doing things that people need to do. So just a different way. I think it's going to really open up a lot of opportunity as people start to wrap their mind around the ways that they can engage Agent Force.
Thank you, Berkeley, for that addition.
Yeah. This is not a question, but a comment. I like the examples you use with music and new employee. Um, and I believe that's all the questions that we had in the chat. Um, yeah. Thanks everybody for all the questions, all the interaction. We definitely appreciate it. I also want to thank you all for attending. We will be sending you a follow-up email shortly, which will have a link to this recording. You can also visit our website where we have a ton of blog content about Salesforce and our experiences. If you're interested in discussing data strategy further or anything else you're considering to do with Salesforce, we're happy to jump on a call with you to discuss and help you think through the next step in the process. Once again, I'll drop my email in the chat. Also, when this webinar concludes, you will see a survey at the end. We would really appreciate your feedback by filling this out. And for every completed survey, Arkus will plant 5 trees in your honor. So please consider filling out the survey. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. I hope this was helpful and informative. We will have another webinar in 2 months. And I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you all.